Alrighty, so all 13 games for match week number 23 is in the books, and I'm actually decided that I'm going to do a bit of a throwback to what I used to do in the review. So remember back in the 2019 and 2020 season, whenever there's a lot of games that was happening, I usually split the review into two parts, usually split it in half, where I look at the first 7 or 6 games, and then I look at the remaining 7 games in part 2 of the review. I'm going to do exactly the same thing in this review, although as it turns out we actually only had 12 games that was finished in match week number 23, and for the first time since I've started doing review on this channel, we actually had a game that was postponed because of weather, and I'll talk about which game that is in part 2 of the review that I'm going to do. But looking at these first 7 games, well, it seems like it was feast or famine in terms of these 7 games that I watched, where either there wasn't a lot of goals that were scored in a game, or there's a ton of goals that were scored in a game. But we start off with the first match, which is the one that I think a lot of people have their eyeballs on, which is LAFC versus the Seattle Sounders, because anytime when LAFC take on the Seattle Sounders, you know it's a marquee matchup, and that it feels like this is another game just like the one earlier this season. It had that playoff feel. Like, it had that playoff feel, like both of these teams had something to fight for, and that both of these teams are looking to try to move on into the next round. I'm also going to be interesting to see whether or not if both of these teams will meet each other in the playoffs, because they have meet each other in the playoffs a lot in these last couple of years. Well, I said a lot. It's only they only meet each other twice, but it feels a lot of time with the way that whenever both of these teams play against each other, you know it's going to be a good game. Now, in the first half, and just as we talk about how it was kind of a playoff feeling kind of game, it was a very cagey start. Like, neither of these teams really, they took a lot of gamble early in the first 15 minutes of this game, but we did see the opening goal 15 minutes into this one. In fact, it happened in the 14th minute when Murillo unfortunately puts it into his own net, and in some way, it was either him putting it into his own net or Christian Rodon was going to tap in. I mean, that was a wonderful ball that was played in the middle by the Sounders, and yeah, the Sounders were up 1-0 early in this game. Now, Fry did deny Cifuentes in the back post before it looked like the game was tied up at 1 apiece when Vela puts it into the back of net, but VAR deemed that the goal was disallowed for offside, and rightfully so. So, as that one was just a little bit offside there from LAFC, but you can definitely sense that this looks like it started to become a very 2022 LAFC kind of game, where they start off slow and that they started to pick up the momentum. Our Iago Doe did have an opportunity in the 31st minute, but he missed just wide from the corner. But on the other end, Rango hits one into the side netting, and then literally a couple of seconds later, Mahana Opoku scored what could be the goal of the week, which, you know, that's going to be interesting to see whether that can beat some of the amazing free kick goals that we've seen throughout this week. But yeah, what a goal also that was from Opoku, as he scored here from Blessing to tie the game up at 1 apiece, and you just kind of sense that LAFC has the momentum. And in the 37th minute, Chiellini decided to just kind of hold my beer, because he tried to show his long-range effort, but goes wide like that. I mean, Chiellini has never known to be a guy that scored a ton of goals and scores a long-range effort, but my oh my, that was a lovely hit, and he almost put that one into the back of net. Like, if that one was in the back of net, you know there's going to be a lot of storyline, not only in MLS, but in the world of soccer in general. Now, in the 41st minute, Fry robbed Arango on point blank. Like, I don't know how Chicho Arango did not put that one away. I mean, it was a great save from Fry, but with the form that Arango is in, you think that he would have put that one into the back net. But thankfully for LAFC and for Arango, you know, LAFC would able to get that go-ahead goal. And after I wrote LAFC have took over this game and look for the go-ahead goal, they do. It's Vela scoring for Cifuentes and Palacio to make it 2-1 in favor of the Sounders. And yeah, I feel like that was one that maybe Fry should have done better, because, you know, it wasn't really hit that well from Carlos Vela. Not one of the best shot that he ever hit, but, you know, Fry, you know, aren't able to keep that one out. And there's just something about Stephen Fry and LAFC where we've seen this story before, where he has commit a goalkeeping howler. Well, in this case, it wasn't really a goalkeeping howler, but more like I think he could have definitely done better in this play. But as as I mentioned, just kind of flashback of what happened in 2018 when he basically committed a howler to allow LAFC, of course, get the 1-0 win late in the game. Now, heading into the second half with LAFC leading 2-1 in this one. Oboku actually went through on goal, and he was looking to try to get that second goal, but he missed that one wide, and you can definitely see LAFC were picking up where they left off at the end of the first half, and they were looking for that third goal, and I thought the Sounders midfielder looked very overmatched and disjointed, and that is got to be a concern if you're the Sounders, because, in these kind of games where you're playing against some of the best team in the league, the way that they kind of got overmatched by LAFC in this one is a bit concerned, because when you do want to be considered a cup contender, which I feel like the Sounders are still a cup contender, you cannot have those kind of moments. And I also feel like, if Joao Paulo was actually on the pitch in this game, which, he's not going to be for the rest of the season, I don't think the Sounders midfield would look that disjointed with the way how it was in this one. But yeah, I mean, they were just getting overmatched and overrun by this LAFC attack. Bruin then flicked it just wide from close range in the 54th minute, before in the 57th minute, Blessing almost toe-poked one in, but Fry just was able to save that one off the line. There was a loud ovation from the 22,000 inside Bank of California Stadium when Bale made his home debut. I mean, it's kind of hard to believe that it has took this long for Gareth Bale to make his home debut, but, when they, of course, signed him. I mean, he did get a standing ovation when he was when he was watching from the suites, but this is the first time that these LAFC fans were able to see their most anticipated player making his debut, and there was definitely a loud ovation when that of course happened, as it is the case pretty much every time when he stepped onto the pitch. But in the 83rd minute, Ladero blasted high from long range as the Sounders were trying to push to get the equalizer, but in the end, LAFC hold firm and win 2-1 in this one. And the shots in this one, 19 shots compared to 11 that the Sounders had, 8 shots compared to no shots on goal for the Seattle Sounders in this game. I don't remember the last time the Sounders had finished a game without a shots on goal. That just tells you how dominant this LAFC defense was in this game, and also tells you the story that, this was also a game where the Sounders weren't without Ruidíaz, and I did mention in the preview, having Ruidíaz in this team could be the difference between them potentially have a chance to get a draw or a win, or them potentially not do much in this one. And it's not a big surprise that they were really do too much or really trouble Craig Pohl's goal at all throughout this game. Which again, even without Ruidíaz, I've seen the Sounders at least have been able to put shots on goal. So it's kind of surprised that they finished with 0 throughout the entire game, but. Again, all credit to that LAFC backline. Very solid throughout this one. 7 shots off target for the 9 that the Sounders had. 2 shots that was blocked for the 4 that LAFC had. And possession-wise, 52% possession compared to the 48% possession that LAFC has in this game. And, kind of started to feel like 2019 all over again. When you remember how LAFC kind of run away with the league and run away with the Supporters' Shield standings. When you look at the standings right now and you look at the Supporters' Shield race, I mean, they aren't really exactly running away with it. I think the Union are keeping close in terms of that Supporters' Shield race, but when you look at the standings between first through second in the West, I mean, they are starting to run away with it. Like, they have now an 8-point gap, and I think they also have a game in hand over Austin. So yeah, that just tells you that it's pretty clear that LAFC probably is going to win the West again. But obviously, when you win the Supporters' Shield, there is that curse, and that, as good as LAFC has been playing so far this season, it's pretty much all about what happened in the playoffs. Like, and their fans knows it too. Like, this is pretty much an MLS Cup or bust kind of year for them, and that, if they can continue this performance, maybe they can turn that playoff woes. But obviously, like I said, so far for this team, as I mentioned before in the emotion index, this team is pretty much in a mode where wake us up when playoff begin, and then we'll start really judging on this team whether if this is a good season or not. But in the case of the Seattle Sounders, I mean, I will still say the Sounders will make it to the playoffs, but they started to eerily give me vibes of that 2018 Toronto team. Remember in 2018, I talked about TFC of how after they gone on a deep CCL run and came within a penalty kick shootout away of becoming the first team to win CCL, and you could even say that they came a Marky Delgado goal from a way of winning CCF. He didn't miss that shot in the 90th minute. You know how we keep saying that TFC eventually was going to turn around, and they never did. And I'm just kind of fearing that this maybe could be the same case for the Sounders, though. Like I said, they're not that far off in the standings. I mean, the West right now, it is just a jam pack between third all the way down to 12th place right now in the West. So I have no really that feeling, maybe just a little bit feeling that this could be something similar to what happened with TFC in 2018. But for the Sounders, they need to win. They need to get points if they want to not only stay in the playoff hunt but also rise themselves in the standings, because it's eventually going to happen. And that the second half resurgence that they kind of was on for a bit, it definitely has stalled out in these last couple of weeks. But that being said, moving on in terms of the next match, we will go with this one between Minnesota versus the Portland Timbers. So this was a game between two of the hottest teams in the league, but apparently that was not the case for defense in this one, because defense decided that they were not even going to be bothered shutting down two of these potent attack coming into this game, and hence that's why you get a scoreline like 4-4 as what we see in this one. And actually, this won't be the last time I'll mention that scoreline throughout the end of this video. And the goal scoring fest started really quickly. In fact, just 1 minute into this game, in 13 seconds to be exact, Blanco would score from Nishgoda and Moreno to give the Timbers a 1-0 lead. That's the fourth fastest MLS goal to ever score. For those that wonder, is that actually the fastest MLS goal? Not quite, but it was definitely fast, and it was definitely one that, the Loons, they was just sleepwalking. Like, they was just completely sleepwalking on the defensive end, and that would kind of set the tune of what kind of defensive display they would put throughout the 90 minutes against the Portland Timbers. But to the Loons' credit, that lead would quickly evaporate, because 8 minutes later, Fragapane would score from Amaria and Reynoso to tie the game up at 1 apiece. And despite I can definitely go into the bad defensive display by the Loons in this game, the attack, this was probably the most lethal I've seen throughout this season. Probably right on point of when they put 4 goals past Everton. I mean, this was really the first time when we see guys like Amaria, Reynoso, and Fragapane really clicking. And Fragapane, as much as he's been getting a lot of hate throughout this season, he's really started to pick up. He started to find his form that he had in 2021, and that's definitely great news, because a lot of these guys that I mentioned in the beginning of the season that are not scoring and not contributing, it feels like now that they're starting to ride a hot hand and at a right time. That is kind of really the reason why this team is on an 8-game unbeaten streak. Now, in the 10th minute, Moreno missed wide after Boxall basically slipped in his own box. And like I said, while the attack was good, the defense was non-existent. Like, Boxall was just one of numerous defenders that just did not have a good game whatsoever. And I even wrote, the defense is non-existent for the Loons in the beginning of this game. And again, a little foreshadow of what would happen throughout the full 90 minutes too. But then in the 21st minute, Huwane would score his second goal after Fragapane struck the post there. I mean, again, I said it last week. Once Bongi can finally score that first goal, it's going to come into bunches. And, maybe I was a little bit maybe I was maybe a little exaggerated the fact that he had scored like 3 or 4 goals now. But he's definitely on that point, scoring for the second game in a row there to give the Loons a 2-1 lead. And then just 19 minutes later, they would make it 3-1. And guess who? It's Luis Almeria scoring from Le to give Minnesota a 3-1 lead, and the Loons are just flying on the attack. I mean, it was a combination of them playing very well on the attack and actually looked very lethal in the final third, and also the fact that the Timbers decided that they also weren't going to show up in terms of the defensive play, because there was just so much space that was exposed there in their back line. And credit Minnesota, they did a really good job in terms of capitalizing those gaps and really creating some chances and finding some lethal finishing, which is something that has been a problem this season and also for the past couple of years. And I even wrote, Allianz is rocking like never before this season. Like, it was truly deafening throughout this game. It almost kind of reminds me a little bit when the stadium was first open, where I know Allianz Field can definitely get loud when this team is doing well, but but the last couple of home games, especially this season, it hasn't been as loud as what we seen before, and a lot of that is because they haven't been really scoring a ton of goals. And that, when you don't score a ton of goals and you don't entertain your fans, it's hard for them to really provide a sparkling atmosphere. So to see this team playing well on the attack, scoring goals, I mean, it was party atmosphere at Allianz Field. And it was almost 4-1 when Bong Yuhuwani actually went through on goal, but he hit it just wide from long-range effort. And we head to halftime with Minnesota leading 3-1 against the Portland Timbers. And you're thinking, well, this is pretty much done. I mean, surely you think the Loons are not going to blow a 3-1 lead, right? Yeah. In the 49th minute, Blanco would score from Moreno and Chara to make it 3-2 in favor of Minnesota. And again, the defense was still AWOL in the second half. Like that, the amount of space that the Timbers were finding on the transition against this Loons defense, I mean, it was almost similar to what I said about in the first half, where Minnesota was also finding a lot of space that the Timbers were just giving them on the defensive end. And then in the 54th minute, the implosion happened. Nish Godem would score from Bravo to tie the game up at 3 apiece. Again, zero defending from the set piece from the Loons there. And you can also maybe question Dane Sinclair too, the fact that he also kind of got flat-footed and he kind of got caught a little bit in no man's land of whether he should have punched it or should stay on his line. I mean, in my opinion, he probably should have punched there, but it wasn't helped the fact that the defense was just basically ball watching when that free kick was taken into the box. And, I mentioned Allianz Field, which was in party atmosphere 20 minutes ago. It was dead silence after that third goal was scored. Like, it was a stunned silence. And, I mean, I want to say it's a stunned silence because maybe a lot of those fans are surprised the fact that for a 3-1 lead is literally wiped away in a matter of less than 10 minutes in the second half. But it's also kind of what we expected for this team. Like, there's just so many times this team has given me heart attack and just also decided to drop off after they have a massive lead. And how many times when we see that happen, especially on the road, and that's why I have the famous term road heave mode. Yeah, that of course does happen, and it feels like it's happening again, but this time at home. Now, to the credit of Minnesota, they did try to retake the lead. Almeria had a big opportunity, but he heads it right to Ivasic. But then in the 66th minute, the implosion was pretty much complete, as an own goal was scored from Kamar Lawrence. And actually, I feel like, there's a reason why the Portland Timbers have never scored a hat trick in league plays, because I feel like there's every single way that the MLS gods, or even in this case the score, just make sure that record and also that meme is going to continue. Because when Blanco shoot this one, I mean, I feel like this was actually on target. I mean, it did take a slight deflection off of Lawrence, which, by the way, I think you can say the big culprit in this one was Dane Sinclair. And, I talk about the backline not having a great game. Same goes for Dane Sinclair, and I'm starting to kind of be a little concerned with Dane Sinclair, because these last couple of games, he has not been as good as he was in the beginning of the season. And this was just a soft one that he allowed. Like, he literally just dropped this one. I mean, again, it took a deflection off of Lawrence, but not enough where I feel like he just simply dropped this one. And he didn't just drop it anyway. He literally just dropped it into his near post. Like, it's harder to drop a ball in your near post to go in than if you dropped it in like maybe in the middle of your goal. So I feel like that was just combination of bad luck and also just unlike Dane Sinclair there to just commit such a howler, that I think it was also kind of similar to the one that he committed against the Revs, where he just simply dropped the ball and it goes into the back net. But yeah, the game was at 4-3, and if you thought Allianz Field was quiet at that point, I mean, that's when I think they are stunned silence, because that's something we don't usually see for this team to just allow such a soft goal like that. But to Minnesota credit, they were able to respond, and that lead, just like how the Timbers got the lead early in this game, it did not last long, because in the 70th minute, Almeria would score here to make it 4-4 in this game. And yeah, that was bad defending from the Timbers. Like, the fact that they basically flicked that one backwards right into the path of Almeria, that was pretty bad defending. But that's kind of the case in this game, because, this looked like it was an MLS After Dark kind of game, started early in the afternoon, as defense EXE has crashed for both of these teams. Like, there was no defense that was by both of these teams in this one. And in the 74th minute, Dane Sinclair did deny Nishikota from close range. That was actually a big save, not only to keep the Loons tied at 4 apiece, but certainly for Dane Sinclair, because how many times we've seen goalkeeper allow a soft goal and their confidence completely shattered. But you got to credit Dane Sinclair, able to make a big save after just giving up one of the softest goal that he have give up in a Minnesota United jersey. But I also feel like it was just a track meet right now. Like, it was just counterattack counterattack wave after wave as each other and that no defense in midfield was found in this game. Like, every time when each of these teams go on the other end from their own end, there was just no midfield that was ready to intercept the ball. No pressure whatsoever from the defense to close things down when each of the team decided to go into the final third. I mean, it almost kind of feel like very similar to El Tráfico from what I've seen earlier this season. Zuparic then heads it wide from close range before Darren Espria fires it high from long range. And again, the energy inside Allianz Field was absolutely electric. Probably just as electric when this team was up 3-1, because you can definitely sense that they know this is an open game, and that while it was a very risky game that the Loons were playing, you know, when you're at 4-4 and you decide to play an open game like that, you are basically hoping that it's going to go in your favor. But in the 7th minute of stoppage time, the last chance came from this open game when Rosales blast one high there, and in a game that is definitely considered one of the best game of the year, though you could maybe argue maybe not one of the best game of this week too, because I'll talk about another game in that, as I mentioned, also have that same scoreline that was maybe even crazier from what we saw at the end. But yeah, this one, of course, finished 4-4 in this one, and the shots in this one, 13 shots per the 17 that the Timbers had, 7 shots on goal for the 6 that Minnesota has, 5 shots off target for the 7 that the Timbers had, 3 shots that was blocked for the 2 that Minnesota has, and possession-wise, 48% possession compared to 52% possession that the Portland Timbers had in this game. And, you know, in a Minnesota perspective, I mean, it was hard to kind of gauge after seeing this one. I mean, on one hand, if you're a neutral, this was a dream game for you. But if you're a fan of one of these teams, which, you know, I'm definitely am, and, you know, in the perspective, it was not a fun game to watch whatsoever. And in some way, I would kind of more leaning toward the disappointing factor, because, you know, anytime when you blow a 3-1 lead at home, that's brutal. Even if they're able to salvage a point in the end and did show some fighting spirit. And what's even worse coming out of this game is that despite the fact that, you know, both of these teams got a hard-fought point, it comes with a big price, with the way that now both of these teams are going to be short-handed in the next game. You know, the Timbers, they're going to be missing some key players, one of them being Diego Chara. And then for Minnesota, they're going to be missing Boxall, Reynoso, and I think Will Trapp also in the next game. Yeah, those are big names that they're going to be missing in the next game on the road against Colorado, a team that they have never done well, especially playing on the road. So, yeah, you just feel like this is why it's so important for them to get all 3 points, so that maybe they can put the pressure off in the next game, where even if they lose, it wouldn't have mattered, because they'll at least have some cushion in third position. But still, thankfully, they did get some help over the weekend to stay in third place. But yeah, this is kind of a game that, you know, overall this season, in terms of them just always have these late season collapse and always just kind of play well in the first half, but just simply collapse in the second half. That is very concerning, and that is something that it cannot happen in the playoffs, because if this is how they're gonna play in the playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised it would be an early exit. And I've been saying it throughout this season too, where they just cannot have these kind of performance and expect to go deep in the playoffs. And let's just hope that that's not going to be the case and eventually stop, because this team has given me way too many heart attack. Like, I'm surprised my hair hasn't even turned white yet, with the amount of heart attack and the amount of hold your breath moment I've seen this team play throughout this entire season. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is a game between the Chicago Fire and Atlanta United. And as I said before in the preview, it was kind of feast or famine in terms of some of these games, where some of these games have all the goals, and then some of these games where there was no goal that was scored. And this was one of 3 games that ended 0-0 this week, though this is one of 2 that I'll talk about in terms of part 1 of the review. And in terms of this game itself, you know, I will say that this was a game where there were definitely some chances for both teams to get that opening goal, but in the end, neither team was really clinical in terms of their finishing and had to settle for a disappointing 0-0 draw. Now, early on, I thought Atlanta was on the front foot and they were looking the better side. Joseph Martinez had a shot that was deflected, but it goes wide before Slonina denied Araujo on the curler. By the way, there's a lot of rumor now that Gaga Slonina might be playing his last couple of games with the Chicago Fire, with the way that Chelsea is now in heavy interest in terms of signing the young American goalkeeper. But we'll see whether if that will that can continue. As I'll definitely mention a little bit more in the News of the Week episode. But in the 22nd minute, Duran did blast one into the stands before there was a huge shout for a penalty for the Fire that was not given in the 30th minute. But in the 31st minute, Torres just could not poke that one in the doorstep of goals. And then Amada blast one wide from long range. And again, chance was coming thick and fast for both of these teams, as both of these teams were searching to trying to get the opening goal in this one. There was another shout for a penalty for the Fire that was not given before Mueller curled one right to Rios Novos. And then Cisneros had an absolute sitter from about 6 yards out, and somehow he puts that one wide. And again, that shot pretty much summarized Atlanta's day and pretty much the day for both of these teams in terms of the finishing. It was just nowhere to be found throughout this game. But up to that point, we had to halftime scoreless between both of these teams. And in the second half, Joseph Martinez trying to score a spectacular overhead kick goal, but that one goes wide. If this was the informed Joseph Martinez, he would have definitely buried that one in. But because of the fact that Joseph Martinez had really not been looked the same ever since that ACL injury that he suffered, especially this year, it feels like he definitely has suffered for a bit of a downward trend compared to what we know of his ability. Yeah, it wasn't a big surprise, the fact that one goes wide. Torres then blasted wide after just a brutal turnover for Atlanta. Like, Atlanta almost made themselves or Chicago almost made Atlanta pay with the way that they just turned the ball over in their own end. And we talked about from last week in terms of all those games how much turnover is an absolute killer for your team, and that you most of the time you basically pay the price for turning the ball over in your own half. But the start of the second half, pretty similar to the first. Both teams was chasing for that first goal, and it looked like we did get the first goal in the 54th minute when Shaqiri actually puts it into the back net. In fact, I even wrote it on the board, 1-0 in favor of the Chicago Fire. But the problem is VAR disallowed it due to offside, and again, this was the right call too, because when you look on the play, it looked like Shaqiri, when the ball was coming, was in an offside position, and therefore the goal was disallowed. Though Mueller had an opportunity in the 60th minute, but he hits one straight to Rios Novo, and I thought the momentum started to kind of become in favor of the Fire, as they looked like they were the team that was pushing to try to get the opening goal. Mueller had a chance to do so in the 63rd minute as he went through on goal, but puts that one high. And with the form that Chris Mueller has been in for the Fire in the last couple of games, you would definitely bet that he probably should have done better in terms of that opportunity, and probably should have put it into the back of the net. Araujo then puts one right to Slonina before in the 79th minute. Chihos tried to score for the fourth game in a row, but he puts it wide from the corner. And despite the numerous opportunities both of these teams have to score or the opening goal of this game, that opening goal was never to be found, as it ended 0-0 in this one. And the shots in this one, 15 shots for the 13 that Atlanta has, 3 shots on goal for the 2 that Atlanta has, 5 shots off target for the 4 that Atlanta has. Both teams have 7 shots that was blocked, and possession-wise, 50% for both of these teams. And again, really the storyline coming out of this game was neither of these teams can finish. But the long story coming out of this game, certainly for both of these teams, is that they'll be very disappointed with this draw. Like, this draw does not help their cause in terms of the fact that, I don't know if I said this is the desperation derby, and that both of these teams desperate to get wins so that they can get themselves above the red line. Well, a draw would definitely not help their case, as both of these teams still remain below the red line. Though they're still in a touching distance, but you just kind of sense that when you have these kind of playoff 6-pointer and you aren't able to get a win in these playoff 6-pointer and share a point, you feel like both of these teams will definitely walk away feeling disappointed, and maybe even lose some ground in terms of some of these teams that actually did win in terms of the standings wise. Which, spoiler alert, the good news for both of these teams, not a lot of team in terms of that logjam that top out in the Eastern Conference between fifth all the way down to ninth place. Got a win this week. But that being said, I am now going to switch board and look at the next 4 games, or the last 4 games that happen in terms of the Saturday night action and part 1 of this review. So moving on, in terms of the next game, is also another 0-0 draw, this time between Montreal versus NYCFC, but unlike the last game, this one was definitely not as entertaining as what we saw in the last one, and the storyline in this game was pretty much Montreal dominate the first 60 minutes, couldn't find their finishing, and then NYCFC tried to get themselves back into the game and dictate play, and then the rest of the game decided to become an absolute snooze fest, and therefore we ended in a 0-0 draw. Now early on, there was a shout for a penalty, but offside was called as Kyoto thought that he was brought down in the box, but the flag of course went up, and we'll never know whether or not if Kyoto has the claim to say that he was brought down in the box by an NYCFC defender, because the offside flag was up. But I thought Montreal started the better side as they create some good half chances. Lapinainen had an opportunity in the 22nd minute, but he curled one that just goes wide. And I thought NYCFC was having a lot of trouble dealing with the Montreal press, and they were just kind of pinned in their own half. Like, this game looked very similar to the one when they play against the Red Bulls, where this was very similar, where the Red Bulls were putting a press against them, and they were having a lot of trouble in terms of getting out of. And maybe that's the blueprint to play against NYCFC, where maybe you might be just able to kind of press the hell out of them, and also especially don't let them have possession, because if there's one thing we know about this NYCFC team and when they are the most successful is when they have possession, when they dictate, they play and decide to play their own game, and when you take that away from them, they don't look as lethal as when they of course do so. And I thought Montreal did a good job in terms of following that blueprint, and certainly a blueprint that a lot of teams will follow through. Amundsen then drive a cross that flashed just wide off the goal, and it's important to note that actually did not count as a shot in this game. And the reason why I mention that is because NYCFC will actually break records in terms of that department, and that's definitely not break that in terms of that department, but not in a good way, as I will mention a little bit later. Johnson then denied Mihajlovic from close range in the 42nd minute, as NYCFC finished the first half with 0 shots in the entire first 45 minutes, which I think that's also maybe a record for them, because I don't remember they have ever finished the first half with no shots whatsoever. And, I also mentioned coming into this game, it's going to be interesting to see how NYCFC does on the attack with their main man, Tati Cassiano's no longer playing for their team at the time being. And I think the answer after this game is that, yeah, they could be in some serious trouble, because, again, they were just offering no attacking resistance against this Montreal team. Now, in the second half, they did have the best opportunity of the game in the 48th minute, at least in their standpoint up to that point, as Aber trying to flick one to Callens, but Callens weren't able to poke that one in. In fact, he didn't even make any contact of that, so we remain at 0 shots for NYCFC up to that point. But in the 55th minute, this was probably the best chance of the game. And for Mason Toye, yeah, he's going to have nightmares about this one. Like, he had an empty net to shoot this one, and he puts that one high. And this also won't be the first time. I'll talk about in the review this weekend, and especially as I'll talk about in part 2 of the review, this won't be the only time we see a player miss an empty net sitter that ultimately would cost their team all 3 points in a game. Because, yeah, that's one that Mason Toye would love to have back, and 9 out of 10 times he's got to put that one in. Kyoto then hits the side netting in the 56th minute as Montreal was regaining the momentum. I mean, I thought NYCFC started the second half the better side, but Montreal quickly regained the momentum. In fact, the shots were now 11-0 to Montreal, but the problem is only one of them was on target, and it was that chance that Mihajlovic had in the 42nd minute, which Sean Johnson was comfortably able to save that away. But in the 60th minute, the first shot finally came for NYCFC as Thiago Andrade pulls the trigger from long range, but he pulls that one wide. And that first attempt on goal seems to woke up NYCFC, because they started to kind of dictate the play, and this is kind of what I thought started thinking, well, is this going to be similar to the New York Derby where, as they grow into this game, they eventually would get that opening goal, right? Well, no, because like I said earlier, the last 30 minutes of this game, you probably don't have to watch the last 30 minutes of this game and that you wouldn't have missed anything, because my oh my, it was an absolute bore fest in the last 30 minutes where neither team not only had any success in terms of on the attack, but both of these teams looked like they just didn't want to be there anymore. I mean, it was just such a boring last 30 minutes, and it's hard to believe I actually did focus the last 30 minutes more on this game than the next game that I'll talk about, though. That next game, I'll talk about how there's a good reason why I didn't focus the last 30 minutes of that one. But it just kind of turns out to be just such a bore fest to a point where I almost kind of start watching the other game too, because again, just nothing happened in the last 30 minutes of this game, and it's unsurprising that the game ended scoreless because of that. And the shots in this one, 13 shots compared to just 2 that NYCFC had. That's the fewest shot that NYCFC has ever had in a game. 1 shot on goal compared to none that NYCFC had. 5 shots off target compared to 1 that NYCFC had. 1 shot that was blocked compared to 7 that Montreal has. And possession-wise, 59% possession compared to the 41% possession that NYCFC has in this game. And keep in mind, coming into this game, these were 2 teams that are the highest goal scoring team in the Eastern Conference. And if you would have told me this was kind of the type of game that we would see, yeah, I wouldn't have believed you. But again, this is why we love MLS at times, where, even in some games where you might think that things could be very boring, it turns out to be like a 4-4 game. But then there's also the other way around, where it can, again, work against you, where you think that maybe this is going to be a game where there could be a lot of goal scoring, especially when you look at these are 2 of the highest goal scoring team in the Eastern Conference. You would not expect it to be one of the most boring game and one of the most forgettable game this season, and that's exactly what we saw in this one. And again, certainly both of these teams will not be happy with this result. I mean, for Montreal, you never want to drop points at home, especially they were the better team for majority of this game. And then for NYCFC, like I said, it's only 1 game, but there's already alarm bells ringing the fact that there could be they could be in serious trouble with the way that they just couldn't generate anything on the attack in this one without Tati Castellanos. And there technically has been alarm bells ringing before when Tati Castellanos was sold, because when they did not have him in some of these games, they just simply can't do much overall in the attack. And that this also just kind of shows you how important Tati Castellanos was with this team, and that if you're an NYCFC fan, you just hope eventually Nick Cushing and this talented attack is going to figure out. Because when you look at this attack, it should not be an attack where we should be seeing them only putting up two shots in a game, or just struggling like what they have done in previous games this season without Tati Castellanos. But time will tell whether they can do so, because if they can't do that when playoff time come, this team could face an early exit like they've done before they went all the way last season to an MLS Cup title. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is the Union versus the Houston Dynamo, and I thought this was going to be 7-0 again. I thought this was going to be like the Union versus DC United, where the Union was going just absolutely destroyed an opposition. And I feel like this season for the Philadelphia Union, I think when you watch some of their game, it's almost like feast or famine for this team. There's been times where when they can get on a roll and when they can get like free goal score in this one, they're going to maybe put a 4th or a 5th, and in this case a 6th goal. But when they can't get the attack going, they maybe can just settle for like 1 or 2 goal. And in this case, it was definitely feast against the Houston Dynamo. I mean, they absolutely blow the Dynamo out of the window. And that, again, this game was eerily similar to the 7-0 beatdown that they had against DC United. Because early on, there was not really much that was happening, as there was no shots throughout the first 15 minutes, which I thought that was similar to the game between DC, where I think the first 15 minutes of this game, there was no shot in the game. And I haven't even mentioned the fact that the Union has most of the possession, and that there's just been some numerous emergency defending from this Dynamo team. Now, in the 18th minute, it looked like the Union had a big opportunity to get the opening goal, but VAR overruled an original penalty that was given to the Union after they deemed that Steres did not handball that one. And in the end, I think it's the right call because, yes, I know that that ball did kind of hit Steres and his arm was outstretched, but he was sliding down. Like, I feel like that would have been incredibly harsh with the way that that ball kind of hit his knee and then hit his arm that was outstretched when he was sliding down. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have seen before that those has been given, and those are some of the ones that I've said many times before. You know, I don't know with the new handball rule in MLS or the one that FIFA basically implemented, what exactly should they call on. But at the end of the day, I feel like they got it right with the way that, again, what can Daniel Steres do there, where he just simply cannot able to not handball that one when he was making a sliding motion, and that there's no doubt that he definitely did not intentionally handball that one in the box. So in the end, it was the right call, and no penalty was given, but the Union would get that opening goal in the 23rd minute, and it's Gastak scoring from Bedoya and Uru to give the Union a 1-0 lead, as Daniel Gastak reminds everybody that he can still be a lethal goal scorer too, like what we saw in the beginning of the season. But that lead looked like it was short-lived, as in the 33rd minute, the Dynamo looked to equalize when Pico went through on goal and puts it past Blake, but unfortunately, the goal was disallowed for offside, as Pico was just in an offside position, and the Union definitely dodged a bullet in terms of the fact that they almost allowed the Dynamo to do their bread and butter, which is they loved to sometimes counter attack when they have the opportunity to do so. But in the 36th minute, Bedoya heads it high from close range. Before in the 42nd minute, Jack McGlynn scored his first career MLS goal there to give the Union a 2-0 lead. And, you know, when you, of course, score your first career MLS goal, you want to make sure it's a good one. And my, oh my, this was a banger from Jack McGlynn. And we know he can definitely strike a good free kick, but he basically put that one on a poster or stamp. And again, you know, I want to say goal of the week with a question mark, but, you know, as I'll talk about a little later, we also saw a banging free kick goal that was scored that, you know, that could be in direct competition in terms of the free kick goal that Jack McGlynn basically scored in this one. But nevertheless, what a goal that was for the youngster, and what a way to score your first career MLS goal. But yeah, that puts the lead to 2-0. And then just a couple of minutes ago, it was 3-0 in favor of the Union, as Uru would score for the first time here from Baizo and Carranza to make it 3-0 in favor of the Union. And you just feel like the route is on. Like, you fear that Houston was going to be suffering the same fate as DC United, because once the Union can get rolling and they start scoring some goals, it's going to come in bunches. And in fact, that was the case in the second half, as in the 48th minute, Uru will score for the second time in this game, as he scored from Bedoya to make it 4-0 in favor of the Union. Just 7 minutes later, it's 5-0 in favor of the Union, as Carranza would score from Bedoya and Baizo to make it 5-0 up to that point. And at that point, that's when I kind of just stopped watching this. Well, I didn't stop watching this game, but kind of not really pay too much attention in this game, because anytime when you have like a 5-0 game like that, that's a pretty easy game to not really keep too much attention, because you know that game is pretty much all but done. Now in the 68th minute, Burke did look to try to score number 6, but he hits one straight to Nelson. By the way, Steve Clark did have to be subbed off in this one because of an injury, so Nelson came in relief, and I gotta feel so bad for him, because, you know, I don't think either of those goals really was his fault. And, you know, again, anytime when your goalkeeper have to come in the middle of the game when you're not expecting to do so, it is definitely brutal. But you gotta give credit to the Union; they capitalized on that. Though, again, you know, most of the goals that Nelson conceded, there was really nothing he can do. I mean, he was just getting completely hung out to dry by that defense of the Dynamo, that just like the defense that the Timbers and Minnesota, and as I'll talk about later in the game between Miami and FC Cincinnati, it was non-existent throughout this one. Though Nelson did make a big save in the 69th minute, robbing Carranza as he went through on goal. Then Offerson had a rare opportunity for the Dynamo, but he puts that one wide. But then in the 88th minute, it would be number 6 for the Union, as Quinn Sullivan would score for only his 3rd time in his career from Jack McGlynn to make it 6-0 in favor of the Union. And you know that goal has to put a big smile in the face of Jim Curtin. Like, these are two of the youngsters representing the pride of the Union Academy, scoring and assisting on this one. And yeah, That of course pushed the lead to 6-0, and that would be the final score of this game. Just an absolute demolition job that the Union had against the Houston Dynamo. And the shots in this one, 16 shots committed, 11 that the Houston Dynamo has, but the shots on goal is where it tells the story. 8 shots on goal committed, 1 that the Dynamo has. 5 shots off target for the 3 that the Union has. Both teams had 5 shots on his block, and possession-wise, 50% for both of these teams. And I think after this game, you can safely say that the Union, I know throughout this season the East has been wide open, but if I do have to pick one team that I think could be the favorites coming out of the East, it's the Philadelphia Union, because they are playing some really good soccer right now. And that, especially, I think, ever since they finally started to realize that they don't just draw every single game like they did in the middle of the season, and now start winning games, it feels like they're starting to find their rhythm again. And it's good, the fact that, not only they started to find their rhythm again, but, as much as it was frustrating during those times when they were drawing games and they had a winless run, at least they weren't losing some of these games, and that now that they start winning again, they're definitely creating a cushion in the Eastern Conference, and almost started to trying to do what LAFC did with the West, trying to run away with the East a little bit. But like I said, we'll see whether or not if that, of course, continue. But for the Dynamo, yeah, just as I praised them in the preview that they've been playing much better on the road, yeah, well, that, I guess, I maybe want to apologize to Dynamo fans a little bit. I might have kind of jinxed them in terms of that, because, yeah, to say that this was the worst performance that the Dynamo has ever had on the road is an understatement, because it literally is. This is literally the worst loss in their club history. They have never lost that badly as they did in this game against the Philadelphia Union. But on the other hand, if you look on the positive side, this is also the first time we've ever seen in MLS history where two times the Union were able to put 6+ goal at home ever in league play. So yeah, certainly a great moment for them. But like I said, this is a team. It's feast or famine with this team. Like, when they can get on a roll, they can definitely get on a roll and put a bunch of goals on the score sheet. Speaking of bunch of goals, moving on in terms of the next game. So, as I said, in that game between Minnesota versus the Portland Timbers is definitely one of the best game of the season, but might not be one of the best game of the week, because in this game between Inter Miami versus FC Cincinnati, and I'm not sure if these players probably saw that Minnesota versus Timbers game, because if they, of course, they thought, you know what, let's try to one-up that. Let's try to also create our own 4-4 draw and create some more chaos as we saw in the second half in this game. And in some way, I feel like when you also look at this game was almost similar to the 4-4 draw that I see between Minnesota and the Portland Timbers. I mean, in this game, the home team had the lead, although not as big as what we saw Minnesota in the first half. They blew that lead by giving up 2 straight goals, and then miraculously they're able to get themselves the equalizer despite having all the momentum against them. And yeah, that's exactly how this crazy game ended, minus the fact that you mentioned the fact that defense decided to also not show up in this game either. Now, in the first half, I thought Miami has most of the possession, but not really a lot of chances was created due to the lack of final third. In fact, the first big opportunity came in the 13th minute as Robert Taylor curls it just wide, and we know Robert Taylor has the skill to take on the defender, and he almost scored another goal also here. Though on the other end, Brenner had it tapped in the back post, but he puts that one high. And after a slow start in this game, Cincinnati really kind of grew into this game. That is until in the 23rd minute, Gonzalo Higuain showed up. And you can definitely sense that Gonzalo Higuain, I feel like ever since what Phil Neville kind of threw him under the bus, he has been a man on a mission. Like, he is a guy that is looking to try to get his starting spot back from Campana, and he definitely made a case after this game, because what a free kick that was from him. He puts that one on a poster stamp, or in the case of Ray Hudson, they put that where spiders are basically crawling. And yeah, that gave Inter Miami a 1-0 lead, though that lead would be short-lived, because just 6 minutes later, Brenner would score from Alves Pau to tie the game up at 1 apiece. Though that equalizer looked like it was short-lived too, because in the 32nd minute, Pozuelo trying to score his first goal for Inter Miami, but he puts that one high. But in the 37th minute, Miami does retake the lead, and guess who else? Guess who scored the goal? It's Gonzalo Higuain scoring from Pozuelo to give give Inter Miami the lead again. So Pozuelo, even though he didn't get on the score sheet, though he kind of did in the second half, but I'll talk about a little bit later, or just kind of a spoiler alert. VAR basically said no on that. At least he, of course, got on the assist chart, and I think that's the first assist that he had in an Inter Miami jersey, and it's great to see that Pozuelo is started to kind of almost look like his old self during his MVP days with TFC. But again, like the first goal that, or the first time when Inter Miami lead in this game, the lead would be short-lived once again. In fact, this time it's even shorter-lived than what we saw when they went up 1-0, because 3 minutes later, Brenner would respond as he scored from Acosta and Vasquez to tie the game up at 2 apiece. And I even wrote, are we headed for another 4-4 game? Now, I swear to God, when I wrote this, I didn't think that was going to happen. I think it would have been just so MLS if this will be another game that ended 4-4 after the one that I saw earlier this week, or not earlier this week, but earlier today, or earlier yesterday in the sense that all these games happened yesterday. But little did we know that it feels like the MLS gods probably saw that and decided that, yeah, we're going to try to make that a reality. But in the first minute of stoppage time, penalty was given for Inter Miami as VAR deemed that Blackett did brought down Mota in the box. I mean, you could say that maybe he did. Well, actually, I wouldn't say maybe he did. He definitely did in that place. I'm actually thinking about another play that was kind of controversial, but this definitely was not one of them. And that gives the penalty for Inter Miami, and you know who had to step up to take that penalty. It has to be Gonzalo Higuain. He had to try to get himself a hat trick, which indeed he does, as he converts here to make it 3-2 in favor of Inter Miami, and that would be the scoreline heading into halftime. And in the second half, it was almost 4-2. As I said, Pozuelo looked like he finally scored his first goal for Inter Miami, but unfortunately, the goal was disallowed because there was an offside on the attacking sequence, and indeed, that was the case. I don't know which Miami player was offside in the attacking sequence, but yeah, when you look on the replay, it was close, but it looked like he was just leaning toward in an offside position, and when that happens, yeah, it's pretty clear that the goal, of course, was disallowed. So yeah, unfortunate for Pozuelo, almost scoring his first goal for his new team, but this game remains 3-2, and it would be this offside call that disallowed the goal would be huge of what we see for the rest of the game, because after a counter denied Murphy in the 65th minute, and he actually kind of redirect that shot that Vasquez basically put in toward goal. FC Cincinnati really started to push to try to get this equalizer. Costa curled one just wide, and as I mentioned, they really started to get back into this game and look for the equalizer, and they did in the 80th minute. It's Vasquez scoring from Barrial to tie the game up at 3 apiece, and yeah, that was not great defending for Inter Miami. Like, there was a lot of ball watching that was going on, and a lot of just very disheartening kind of defense showing there from Inter Miami, and yeah, they paid the price by that, and the game was tied up at 3 apiece. And then just 6 minutes later, the implosion happened as Vasquez would score once again, this time from Barrial and Kubo. And like I said, Brendan Vasquez, if Greg Berhalter doesn't call him up for the September camp, you fear that he could potentially defect to Altri, because like I said, there's that discussion. Is Vasquez going to represent the U.S. or is he going to represent Mexico? And the best way for the U.S. to cap-tie him is actually decide to call him up for the national team, because he has just been in such a great form this season, and he might be the answer in terms of that number 9 position that the national team still have not found the answer. I mean, he's just scoring goals left and right this season for Inter Miami, but not Inter Miami, but for FC Cincinnati. But in Inter Miami case, again, it's just a complete implosion, and again, just slow to react on the defensive department. And just like that, it was 4-3 in this game, and you're thinking, well, this game is over, right? Well, no, because there would be one last late twist, because that's the case with Inter Miami. Like, if there's one thing I will also say about Inter Miami, this team sometimes don't give up, and that this team feels like it's started to create that Goonies kind of magic that the Quakes have had for a long time, because I've seen them score a lot of late goals, and this was one of the latest one as in the 7 minutes of stoppage time, literally the last kick of the game, McVay would score from the new signing Corton jump to tie the game up at 4 apiece. And lo and behold, I mean, I predicted that then, or I thought that 40 minutes ago this was going to end at 4-4, and it did. It ended again in a 4-piece affair. In fact, this is also the first time in league history where we see 2 games on the same week ends up to be a 4-4 scoreline. This is a scoreline that just doesn't happen often. This is not like 3-3 or, well, this is not like 2-2 or even in some cases 3-3. 4-4 is something that has rarely happened in MLS. In fact, last season I don't recall we have seen a lot of 4-4 draw, and this season I think we've already seen 3 of them, with this game and then the game between the Timbers versus Minnesota, and then also the one between Cincinnati and NYCFC also ended 4-4. I mean, yeah, it's crazy how at times we have seen these games where these games are just completely off the rail, and in a neutral perspective, it's an entertaining feat to watch. But on a defensive department, and certainly if you're rooting for one of these teams, it's got to be a very frustrating kind of game to watch. But the shots in this one, 14 shots for the 15 that Cincinnati has. Both teams had 7 shots on goal, 6 shots off target for the 7 that FC Cincinnati has. Both teams had 1 shot that was blocked, and possession-wise, 54% possession compared to 46% possession that FC Cincinnati has in this game. And yeah, again, coming out of this game, neither of these teams will be happy, because in the Miami standpoint, you know, anytime when you, of course, had a 3-2 lead, I mean, it kind of hurts maybe a little bit less, because, you know, it's not as bad as a 3-1 lead as some might say. But at the end of the day, when you give up a lead, especially in such a quick fashion like that, yeah, that has to be very painful. But in an FC Cincinnati case, I mean, we talk about the problem with them drawing way too many games in these last couple of weeks. This was a big opportunity for them to finally snap out of that streak, and then they decided to do a very Cincinnati moment, giving up a goal in the 7 minute of stoppage time. I mean, as the old saying goes, you can sometimes take the Cincinnati. You can sometimes oh god, I don't know how it goes. I think it's like you can sometimes have a good Cincinnati team, but you can't always take the old Cincinnati out of them, and that in this case it feels like Cincinnati just had to do what they always done throughout their existence in MLS, which is kind of break the hearts of their fans by giving up a late goal. But knowing a lot of these heartbreaking moments, I guess maybe the paint kind of meter in terms of this game is probably maybe like a 4 out of 10. I think Cincinnati fans have suffered much more heartbreaking losses, or at least in this game they got a draw out of this thing, than they have done, especially from last season, where it feels like that was kind of like a tradition every single week from them. But now, moving on into the last game on this board, and again, this is a relatively long video because there was a lot to talk about in terms of these 7 games, is Nashville versus the Vancouver Whitecaps, and this is Exhibit A in terms of what happened when you don't put the game away, and when you don't kill the game away and let the opposition back into the game and you drop points. And this has been a problem for Nashville this season, especially at home, where it looked like they could have won 2 or 3 nothing in this one, and then they let Vancouver back into this game, and to no one's surprise, Vancouver was able to salvage a draw. Because how many times I've seen this season, when you let your opponent back into the game, especially in the last 30 minutes of the game, where you decide to just kind of bunker and seize out a win. I mean, some good teams are able to do so, but there's just so many times where some teams that are kind of like mediocre or below the red line or just above the red line, that is just not a sustained kind of strategy to seize out game. And, you know, in Nashville case, well, that they can of course do that in these past 2 seasons. That's just not been the case this season. Like, so many times this season when they try to go with that low block, they just have not been able to finish the job, as we've seen in previous season. Though that being said, like I said, they really play well for a majority of this game, as in the first half, literally 5 minutes into this game, they not only shot out of the cannon by putting some relentless pressure on Vancouver, they were forcing a lot of corners. Like 4 minutes in, they already won 4 corners. Like they were trying to average 90 corners in this game, which I think that not only would have broke the record for the most cornering again, but not even close in terms of that. But the first big opportunity came when Shaq Moore, who was making his debut for Nashville in this one, trying to score an amazing goal on his debut, but he kind of really drive this one into traffic, and it was blocked off the line. Mukhtar then puts it wide on the free kick before Cropper denying Bunbury in the 15th minute, but you just kind of had a feeling with so much pressure that Nashville was putting on Vancouver, that relentless pressure is eventually going to turn into a goal, and that would be the case before Romney had a shot that was clear off the line. In the 17th minute, that pressure finally resulted in a goal. It's Bunbury scoring from Mukhtar to tie the game up at 1 apiece, and Teal Bunbury, quietly started to find his stroke again. I mean, this is a guy that I think before he scored a goal a couple of games ago, everybody forgot that he's still playing MLS. Like, he has been kind of a bench warmer for Nashville, and people forgot that he still is in the league, and he still played for Nashville SC, even though he hasn't had a lot of appearance, and that it's got to feel good for him to now start to get on a roll again, and maybe could be another threat in terms of this Nashville attack. But despite Nashville having that 1-0 lead, they weren't going to let off. They were trying to continue to pressure the Whitecaps, and the Whitecaps are just not only getting pinned in, but they just could not play out of that Nashville or just play out of their own box, because they was either turning the ball away in their own end cheaply, or the fact that Nashville was doing a very good job in terms of pressing high up the pitch. In fact, the shots were 8-1 just 25 minutes into this game, and it looked like Nashville was on point for a 30+ kind of shot night, with the way that they were averaging 8 already inside a quarter, almost a third into this game. Bunbury then heads it high from close range in the 29th minute. But then, on the other end, Vancouver had their first big opportunity as Willis had to deny White there in the 29th minute. And that kind of woke up Vancouver a bit, because after that, not only the fact that Nashville got to be careful with the way that, even though they were dominating for the first 30 minutes and allowing nothing from Vancouver, one bad bounce or one mistake on them, and the Whitecaps could definitely get themselves the equalizer with the hosts only have that slim 1-goal margin. In fact, Vancouver was trying to seize that opportunity, because in the 39th minute, Gall would fire one just wide from close range, and again, the Whitecaps started to gain a foothold into this game, and they were trying to steal a goal before halftime. Like, despite how dominant that not dominant, but more like they were just getting dominated throughout this game by Nashville. They had a chance to tie the game up and trying to score against the run of play, but it was not meant to be, as we had to halftime with a 1-0 lead. But in the second half, Mukhtar then heads it wide from close range, and I think whatever message that Gary Smith told to this guy, he probably told his guys that, yeah, it's only a 1-0 lead, despite all the dominance, you got to push for that second goal, and they kind of did in the beginning of the second half. After I mentioned Mukhtar heads it wide from close range, Saban heads one that goes high, and Nashville was looking to try to kill this game off. But in the 60th minute, Dahomey would hit one straight to Willis before 10 minutes later, Gall would fire one high from long range. And this is when the game started to turn in the favor of the Whitecaps. And this is also when, there's a reason why I've always used the word row heave mode, which is kind of a famous tactics, or I wouldn't say famous, but infamous tactics, where Adrian Heath likes to just kind of, for the last majority of the game, especially in the second half, just kind of switch off and just let the opponent get back into the game and just kind of hold on for dear life, because that seems that was the case for Nashville in this one, as in the last 30 minutes they just started to not attack with that ferocity as we saw for the majority of the game, and they kind of just allowed the Whitecaps back into the game. Gresso would then fire one wide from close range, and again, the Whitecaps, they were knocking on the door. Like, if you actually watch the last 20 minutes of the game, you would have no idea the fact that Nashville should have been at least 3 or 4-0 up, but you just kind of had a sense that, Nashville not only going with their usual low block, but will this come back to haunt them, where they have that problem this season with the inability to close off games. And yep, the answer is yes, because in the 87th minute, Jameer Brown would score from goal to tie the game up at 1 apiece, though Nashville did have one last big opportunity in the 4th minute of stoppage time as Cropper denied Hawkinson, and on the follow-up, Zimmerman just blasted that one high. But in the end, it ended in a 1-1 draw in this one, and the shots in this one, 18 shots compared to 21 that the Whitecaps had. Yeah, the Whitecaps had 21 shots in this one. Like, they were throughout the first 25 minutes, they only had 1 shot throughout the first 25. That just shows you how they were putting a lot of pressure on this Nashville team, and especially majority of those 21 shots came in the last 30 minutes as they were definitely the better side, and kind of partially because Nashville just kind of allowed them to get themselves back into this game. 3 shots on goal for the 6 that Vancouver has, 9 shots off target for the 8 that Nashville has, 6 shots that was blocked for the 7 that Nashville has, and possession-wise, both teams had 50% possession for the team, and I mean, it's safe to say that the home team will no doubt be the more disappointing team coming out of this game. And that for Nashville, how many times we've said that they at home this season, it felt like not only valuable points are dropped once again because of giving up late goals, but also the fact that, you know, again, this is not a team that I feel like has defended in a way as well as what we've seen in their first 2 years of existence. And I mean, maybe partially that it's due to the fact that Gary Smith might think about opening up a little bit, especially with the attacking talent that he has in his disposal, but also with the fact that maybe there are a couple that players on that back line, especially they did lose a key player in Alistair Johnston, and that, you know, time will tell whether Shaq Moore can of course fill that spot. You know, their back line isn't as solid as what we've seen in the first 2 years in their existence in MLS, and you know, that's kind of maybe is the reason why they've been dropping points left and right, because if this happened in the first 2 seasons, if this of course was the first 2 seasons, this would have never happened. And again, I've said so many times before where, you know, if Nashville don't start to get wins at home, they're starting to kind of look like a similar tale to what happened with the Portland Timbers in 2019, where, you know, I mentioned many times before, that team just made it to the playoffs despite the fact that they were absolutely woeful in terms of a very home-heavy schedule. And it seems like this is starting to be the same story this time, with Nashville doing well enough on the road to stay afloat, but when it comes to those heavy home schedule, they cannot take advantage of it, and look like maybe this could still just be a fringe playoff team. But that being said, that is pretty much it for the review of all 7 of these games. Like I said, I know this review was a little bit long because there was a lot to kind of to unwrap in terms of these games. But hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of these 7 games that happen in terms of the Saturday action. And like I said, I will talk about the 6 other games that happen to finish off the Saturday, and also the 1 game. Well, actually, there was 5 games that I'm going to talk about on Saturday action, and then the 1 game I'll talk about on Sunday. Though, again, technically, it should be just 5 games because, as I mentioned, there was 1 game that did start, and then it never finished because of weather delay. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I, of course, will see you guys next time.